today's video. Today we're gonna be reacting to the all-time worst NBA draft day comparisons. Every year, there's always a big draft day comparison, and a lot of times these players disappoint. Sometimes they play good and end up exceeding expectations, or like this thumbnail, Mark Klay Thompson, Marco Bellinelli. Klay Thompson had a lot better career than Marco Bellinelli. Then you got Ben McLemore here, a name I hadn't heard in a while. Comparison was Ray Allen. Thing is, I don't see that comparison because Ben McLemore could shoot, but he was also a more athletic version of Ray Allen. But draft day, I feel like a lot of these players be doomed based off their comparisons from the beginning. Like, even if they have a solid career, like Lonzo, I believe he will have a solid career. It's just the comparisons caused by Magic and his pops ruin his development early on. So people gonna view him as a bust. Same with Wiggins, but Wiggins was more so, I believe he was compared to LeBron. When you compare someone to a top 10 player of all time, no matter who they are, you dooming them for failure. So I I like the smaller comparisons, but anyway, let's just get into the video. I'm already
We looked at the worst draft day comparisons in current memory, and we're going back and looking at some of the worst comparisons of all time. We can't go too far back though, because the draft day comparisons didn't really start until the year 2000, but even starting just back then, you're gonna see it's given us some pretty terrible ones. So for this video,
I was gonna say they weren't being terrible until recently,
a couple
but I
of
guess
newer, more recent ones I found. And we're also gonna try to not mention any that we already talked about in
I don't
the
know
other
who
video.
you talked about
so
in the
if you don't
last
see one you
videos.
might have been expecting, watch the other video. That's the first link in the description first, and you'll probably see it there. Also, make sure you stay tuned all the way until the end.
I don't think
for
I've seen
the
this first
absolute
video
worst
either.
draft day comparison of all time. And last thing I should mention is that for most of these, we're using the comparisons from NBADraft.net. And the first player we're looking at is Kwame Brown, who was known as the biggest bust in NBA history before Anthony Bennett. Because he was first overall straight out of high school, and got enough hype for that to happen because he was 6'11" and 275 pounds as a senior. And his size and athleticism at such a young age was what impressed scouts so much.
I mean, his
and
size and
that with his ability to
athleticism.
hit mid-range shots convinced a lot of people
His
that
size
he
and
was
athleticism, he's gonna be a lot taller. 6'11", bro. Sheesh, he's gonna be taller than a lot of people at that age range. I'm telling you. I believe the tallest player on my high school team was what, 6'5"? Talking about 6'11", so of course he's gonna stand out. And I think he's part of the reason that we have the one and done rule now, because like they believe players need that 1 year of development. So if y'all want players to come back out of high school, blame Kwame as part of the reason for this. He's a bigger bust than Anthony Bennett because everybody was shocked that the Cavs draft Anthony Bennett first. The hype surrounding Kwame Brown, I remember people saying it was always there. So he's a bigger bust than Anthony Bennett, because if we based it off hype, because everybody was shocked that they drafted him
the first overall pick. As for his draft day comparison though, well, NBADraft.net had him compared to Kevin Garnett, which was still terrible, but not nearly as bad as the comparison that was going around from some of the other scouts.
I don't even know who
Many
Anthony
other
Bennett
scouts
was compared to.
Kwame to Karl Malone and Chris Webber, thanks to his NBA
We don't like
sized
Karl
frame.
Malone here,
and not only
but he
that,
was
but they
a
said
great
he played like
basketball
a
player.
guard in a center's body, claiming that he could handle the ball very well and even lead the fast break. So they were saying we had someone the size of Karl Malone that played like a guard. And this is without a doubt one of the worst comparisons of all time, but trust me, it gets worse. And staying on the theme of NBA draft busts, there's Darko Milicic, who had nearly every scout fooled into thinking he was the next Dirk Nowitzki. Because
in Darko's defense, that's one of those examples of a player having unrealistic expectations. But also, I feel every foreign big man gets compared to Dirk. That's the sad reality. I feel like every left-handed player gets compared to another left-handed player. If you long and athletic, if you long and can shoot, you're gonna be compared to KD, because Brandon Ingram was compared to KD. If you tall and can handle the ball and pretty athletic, you're gonna get compared to LeBron.
He was drafted at a time when overseas players were the big thing, and even to this day, but especially back then, scouts wouldn't do too much research about overseas players, but if they were tall, foreign, and had a jump shot, then chances were they were compared to Dirk at one point or another. But not only was he compared to Dirk, he was said to have been a better version of him that could
better version, yikes.
Hands, stretch the floor to mid-range and had incredible shot blocking ability. And not only did that lead to him going second overall, when he probably should have gone late in the second round if anything, but it infamously led to him being picked one.
He was drafted before Melo, Bosh, Wade, Chris Kaman, Kirk Heinrich, TJ Ford. This Michael Sweetney guy sounds familiar.
Man, behind so many James, people, and ahead of Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, without a doubt making this one of the biggest draft day mistakes of all time.
But hindsight's always
2020, so didn't do their research on Darko because he only averaged 6 points and 4 rebounds a game in his 10-year career. Looking at a
he played 10 years, though, in so I guess
Emmanuel
that's a solid
NBA
career, right?
Comparison, according to NBA.
Who was? But yeah, before we see his I feel like the average player's career is only 3 years, so 10 years is pretty solid, but he didn't live up to expectations, so he's a bust for sure.
Draft.net was John Wall, because he was said to have been a rare combination of size, speed, agility, and athleticism to go with the vision and mentality of a point guard. And scouts said that he was a true pass-first kind of point guard that would be a great finisher at the rim, but basically all of the strengths in his report were based on his athleticism, and all of his weaknesses were based on how he actually played the game, which makes it clear that he probably should have never been compared to John Wall in the first place. And seeing how he's played since being in the league makes it clear that he really shouldn't have. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have compared him to John Wall. I don't know who he's compared to. And makes for a solid backup point guard for any team. But they should have found a better comparison for him than to one of the best overall point guards in the league at the time. Then we have Giannis. And
who is Giannis?
NBA Draft.net had his draft day comparison as Nicholas.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll be fair.
Yeah. Okay, he might have been to say.
At the time that Giannis was going into the draft, it was 2013. And when the comparison took place was when Nick was still a pretty solid two-way player for the playoff Blazers team. So we'll give him that. Plus, at the time, Giannis wasn't a great player anywhere near where he's at today. And seeing him back then, you could see how they would have made this comparison. But this is an all-time worst draft day comparison.
Is also,
Giannis
was also like 6'8"
projections
at the time.
Based on where players are currently at and how good they currently look.
Grew and his arms got longer. So
on a player, who
you can't predict
and make the most accurate prediction of the player that they.
You can't predict the player's arms getting longer and him getting taller, because usually by the time you get drafted, you already grown.
Will become, because the whole point of drafting a player is for their future, and seeing how Giannis has turned out, they did a pretty terrible job. Don't get me wrong, not many people saw this coming from Giannis, but given that it's scouts' jobs to do so, we're allowed to knock him for it. One that's not up for debate is Eddie Curry, who in 2001 was compared to Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq, a unanimous top 10 player of all time, the most dominant force in NBA history, was used to describe Eddie Curry. And in his draft report, one line even says he has more strengths and polish than Shaq at the same age, and does not have the Achilles free throw curse that himself and Wilt Chamberlain had. And he was drafted 4th overall the same year as Kwame Brown, which just starts to make this look like a whack draft. Honestly though, Eddie got those comparisons almost solely for his wide frame and being able to still
Eddie had a long career too, I'm pretty sure,
and 300 pounds, while also showing some ability to fight through double and triple teams. But I mean, is that really all it takes to get compared to Shaq? He had a solid 11-year career averaging 12-5, so even though he struggled with his weight, he wasn't a terrible player, but honestly the Shaq comparisons were a better one, and I guess so were Michael Beasley's comparisons to Carmelo Anthony. I mean, at the time, I get it. It made sense. Michael Beasley dominated in high school, averaging 28 in his defense, he had a lot of off-court trouble. Then averaged 26 and 12 for his 1 year at Kansas State, on 53% from the field and 38% from 3, in what was one of the better college seasons of all time. And the Melo comparisons were there. He could shoot mid-range from 3, post up, and on top of that was a great all-around athlete. Yeah, so much so that he was in discussions to go 1st overall over Derrick Rose, but ultimately went 2nd to the Miami Heat in 2008.
I think that Miami lifestyle caught up.
Right, he really did have what it took to be a superstar level player, but it was everything off the court that really derailed.
Yeah, I was just wondering that. And then the way he plays at Rucker Park during the off season, that street ball type of play is really that's his game. So I'm hoping when he's actually done with the NBA, he plays in the Big 3 or something. Is the Big 3 even really still popping? Just curious.
And it was what scouts didn't manage to see back then that would be the biggest factor in ruining his career. So I mean, honestly, this one's not a terrible comparison, but in the long term, he didn't turn out to be the player he was expecting.
Well, I mean, you kind of can
if they already Alexei Shved, and this is a guy you may or may not remember from his brief run on the Timberwolves in 2012 and 13. I mean, if you don't remember him, it's because there was nothing memorable about him.
Who was he compared to?
Before joining the NBA, he was claimed to be a 6'7" natural point guard whose NBA comparison was Penny Hardaway.
Yeah, and if you were a taller guard, you're gonna get compared to Penny or Magic. It's inevitable. You're gonna get compared to one of those two. And didn't Shved end up coming in the league playing shooting guard? So
he was an explosive scorer and playmaker like Penny Hardaway and could play on both ends. But he rarely ever played point guard while in the league.
Yeah,
and only lasted 3 seasons overall.
He played for the
Timberwolves, 7
points,
2 assists, and started 25 total games in his career before going back overseas. I mean, comparing him to Penny Hardaway for what just seemed
Anthony Davis had get a mean poster on him, right?
Pretty unnecessary looking back. And speaking of unnecessary, here we have Adam Morrison. Now, knowing that Adam Morrison
he was compared to Larry
3rd overall, then turned into one of the biggest busts we've ever seen, and looking
he played
back
for the
and
Lakers.
remembering that his draft day comparison was Larry Bird is one of the most incredible scouting errors ever. But it's also a reminder that not everyone translates to the NBA, because while scouts definitely had that part wrong in college, I mean, a Larry Bird comparison was really...
Certain players' play style fit in college, but when they get drafted, the play style don't really translate over, you know.
Believable. He was averaging 28 a game as a senior on 43% from 3.
He had some solid
he wasn't
numbers.
Athletic, he knew how to maneuver and score with ease.
And that's the same way Larry
Jordan
was.
selected him on the Bobcats, it was all down.
Michael Jordan always picked
the 3rd overall pick and only played 2 seasons on the Bobcats and 2 seasons on the Lakers, winning 2 championships, but being a complete meme for his participation or lack thereof on those teams. A more current terrible draft day comparison though goes to Trey Burke, because he was said to have resembled a cross between Kyle Lowry and Kemba Walker, all while being reminiscent of Damian Lillard and having a better grip on passing in the pick and roll than Kemba Walker. And I mean, I haven't seen that much at all from him. Fans have wanted to compare him to Allen Iverson because he came out looking like his twin a couple of seasons ago, but their games aren't really that similar. They both have a good crossover and a street ball kind of feel.
Let's be real.
Stop there.
The person that there's famous YouTuber that uses Trey Burke's jump shot in 2K is more popular than him. Ticino is more popular than Trey Burke. That's tough.
Because of how much more athletic AI was. And I have no idea where the Damian Lillard comparison comes in, because he's also a much better athlete, drives to the basket a lot more often, and while they do both have solid mid-range games, that's also not enough for a comparison. As for the Kyle Lowry and Kemba Walker comparison, I mean, I could see his playstyle matching with both Kemba and Kyle's, but he plays nowhere near the level that they do. Then for Dwayne Wade, there's no bad comparison here, but what scouts said about him before the draft
was he compared to?
Worth mentioning during this video, because they said that he should be taken 11th or 12th overall in 2003, and that he should be converted to a point guard when joining the NBA, because at 6'3" he was way too short for a shooting guard, and on top of that, they even thought he was much shorter than the 6'3" that Mark.
People forget Gilbert Arenas was his ceiling. That's tough, but you got to think back then. If he was like Dwayne Wade was considered a short guard, but his athleticism made up for it. People talk about the 3-point shot being a dying art. You barely see these short shooting guards come in the league and take over. Malik Monk was supposed to be that guy. Donovan Mitchell's doing a good job, but other than Malik Monk, he shows spurts here and there, but he's the most inconsistent player I've seen. One game he'll drop 36. The next game he come out, drop 4 on a bunch of attempts, because that's how inconsistent he is.
Marquette had listed him. So they said that he could one day be a starter on a team.
One day
and that
be
his
a
ceiling
starter.
Was Gilbert Arenas. I mean, at this point, what are scouts even for? Like, what's the point of them if it's
hire me as a scout NBA if y'all see
and
this
a perfect
video.
example of that
Somebody
is
tag
for the worst comparison of the video, and the worst NBA draft day comparison of all time with DeShaun Stevenson, who takes this one for being compared to Michael Jordan. And some of you don't even know who DeShaun is, which, I mean, is...
I remember him. He had a solid career too. Clamped up LeBron in 2011. I'm not a LeBron hater. I'm just saying, because I can't hate him now. He played for the Lakers. He won us a ring. But Michael Jordan being his comparison. Y'all should have known better than this.
Even more of a reason for this to be an outrageous claim. I mean, to start, he never averaged over 11 points a game, was a role player for most of his career, and obviously never came close to living up to the hype. NBADraft.net even tried to defend their claim in 2015 after their scouting report went viral by saying, "Lesson learned, never compare anyone to Michael Jordan."
Don't compare no
2000,
to
the
no
site was just getting started, but go watch the tape of
you gotta think too. They was looking for that in 2000. They're looking for their next. The NBA is looking for their next big star to replace Jordan. Like people, dang, they compared Marshawn Brooks to Kobe just a few years later. I just read that part. And compared Greg Paulus to John Stockton. I don't know who Greg Paulus is. Marshawn Brooks, he played for the Nets, right? I'm pretty sure they spelling his name wrong too. I'm pretty sure it's Marshawn instead of Hawn, it's Hon. I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong. What was I finna say? Don't compare a player to a top 10 player ever.
In high school, he was incredible. One of the most spectacular.
But yeah, I remember now. The NBA is somewhat doomed when Jordan retires. Was doomed when Jordan retired. So they was hyping up everybody to be that next Jordan. I feel like they're going to try to do the same thing when LeBron retires. But I feel like instead of waiting, they trying to look for that next LeBron now. Like they'll try it with Giannis. They'll also try it with, who's another person? Luka. That's why you see a lot of those LeBron comparisons. It's more so that they trying to keep hype surrounding the NBA because they know a lot of casuals are going to stop watching when LeBron retires.
17-year-old wings you could ever see, but not going to college had a catastrophic effect on him. And I mean, it's true, he did skip out on college and go straight out of high school after his grades came into question. But hold on there. So they didn't compare a college kid to MJ. They compared a 17-year-old fresh out of high school to him, which makes matters even worse. I mean, and they didn't blame
Kobe came straight out of high school
on themselves. They blamed it on him skipping college. So that's a big L for them. But luckily, we have a very poorly recorded version of Deshaun Stevenson's aforementioned high school mixtape to review. And honestly, as you can see, there's some impressive athleticism here, but I mean, really nothing too crazy. So this will probably forever be the worst draft day comparison. And honestly, it's not Deshaun's fault because he didn't compare himself to MJ, but he had to deal with the backlash and pressure from it as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, people don't realize that pressure of a
23rd overall in 2000, which was
real.
odd. But like I said, that was the worst and the last one we had for today. With basketball out of people's minds during everything, views are down.
But yeah, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with your friends. Subscribe to me, also subscribe to Austin Sweat. I'm thinking, I kind of want to see more of these comparisons because he said he didn't miss them. It's just he said some already that was in a previous video. So may react to one of those. Let me know what I should react